So the point is, therefore, that you can do everything you have to do in this spirit. Don't make a distinction between work and play. Regard everything that you're doing as play, and don't imagine for 1 minute that you've got to be serious about it. We live in a world where almost everyone believes quite sincerely that something is wrong with them, that they ought to be more this or less that, smarter, kinder, more disciplined, more enlightened, less anxious, less angry, less human. And so they go chasing endlessly after some future version of themselves, always just around the bend, where they finally get it all right. But I'd like to suggest something a little scandalous, that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you, at all. Your very being, this moment, this breath, this strange and sacred sense of I am, is already perfect. Not perfect in the moral sense. Not tidy, polished, or well-behaved. But perfect the way a flame dances, or a tree bends in the wind, or a galaxy spins. You see, you're not something apart from nature, observing it from a distance. You are nature, just as much as the stars, the ocean, and the clouds. The patterns of your thoughts, your laughter, your sorrow. They are every bit as natural as the ripples in water or the sound of thunder. And you don't need to do a thing to earn your place here, because the truth is, you are all already an extraordinary phenomenon of the universe. You're just like that, and that is enough. One of the most extraordinary realizations, and it's not mystical or religious, but simply factual, is this. You didn't come into this world. You came out of it just as an apple tree apples the universe peoples, and you are one of those people. You're not a stranger wandering through a foreign land. You are this place, its eyes, its thoughts, its wonderings about itself. Now, most of us were brought up to feel separate, as though we're tiny egos, trapped inside these bags of skin, looking out at a world that's over there, full of objects and others. But that's a trick of perception, an illusion of language and labeling. In reality, there's no line where you stop and the world begins. You are continuous with it, like a wave is with the ocean. Look at a flame. Does it have a boundary, a fixed shape? It's a process, a happening, a flow. So are you. You are not a static thing. You are a verb disguised as a noun. A whirl of consciousness, feelings, memories, all shimmering like light on water. When you were born, the universe didn't make a mistake. It wasn't trying to test you, fix you, or mold you into something better. It was expressing itself as you. And what a peculiar, delightful, and intricate expression you are. No one else has your exact rhythm, your exact voice, your particular pattern of laughter and silence. That isn't random. That's design in the deepest, most spontaneous sense. But here's where the confusion sets in. From a young age, we were taught to override that naturalness, to conform, to behave, to achieve, to become someone. And in doing so, we began to believe the greatest lie of all, that we are somehow not enough, that we must become rather than simply be. But tell me, have you ever seen a flower straining to bloom? Have you ever seen a tree hurrying to grow? They just do it. They unfold because they are that unfolding. You too are unfolding. You too are nature playing itself out. You are not a problem to be solved. You are not a project to be completed. You are an event of the cosmos, as marvelous as the stars, and just as inevitable. So look again, not with your eyes, but with your being, and perhaps, just perhaps, you'll start to recognize the miracle you've always been. Now, I know when someone says, There's nothing wrong with you. The conditioned mind resists. You might think, but what about my past, my failures, my guilt, my habits, my shame? And yet, all of that too is part of the play, part of the process. You see, from the very beginning, we're handed a story. That being alive is a test. That you're here to prove something to God, to society, to your parents, to yourself. And so we become actors in a theater of self-improvement, constantly fixing, adjusting, striving as if life were a ladder to climb rather than a mystery to dance. But what if that whole project was built on a false premise? The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, and yet everybody rushes around in a great panic as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. So let's try this. Close your eyes for a moment and feel the sensation of being, the aliveness that is present before any opinion or judgment arises. That is you. Not the inner critic, not the timeline, not the to-do list, just the raw, open presence of being here. And what could possibly be wrong with that? Look at the clouds. They don't align themselves neatly into rows. They drift, they swirl, they form and dissolve. Is there anything wrong with them? No one scolds a wave for crashing too early, or a tree for growing crooked. They are not judged by some cosmic scoreboard. But we human beings somehow believe we are the exception, that we alone must justify our existence, that we must earn the right to be. And this is the root of our suffering, the original illusion. The truth is, your imperfections are not mistakes, they are textures, details, echoes of your particular music. You don't need to become worthy of life, you are life, expressing itself in human form. Just like fire flickers, just like water flows, even your attempt to become spiritual, even your desire to improve yourself, is already part of the perfection. It's like the ocean trying to become wet, or a sunbeam trying to shine. It's unnecessary, and yet even that is allowed. So instead of chasing some polished idea of who you ought to be, what if you simply noticed who you already are? Right now, without changing anything, without editing, without effort. There's nothing wrong with you. There never was. It's only the thought that says so, and you're not that thought. You are the silence behind it, the spaciousness that watches it come and go. And once you see this, not as a belief, but as a direct experience, something inside relaxes. And in that space, in that letting go, you begin to remember something ancient and true. You are nature wild, vast, unfinished, and beautiful. And you are just like that. You see, when I say you don't need to do anything, I don't mean you should sit still like a lump of stone. No. No. I mean something far subtler. I mean you don't need to strain to be what you already are. You don't push the river, you float with it. Because the river is doing the flowing, not you. And in the same way, life is living itself through you. Birds don't sing to impress. They sing because it is their nature. You don't have to force meaning or chase purpose. It emerges like a breeze, like a laugh, like a melody, when you stop trying to manufacture it. Effortless action, as the Taoists say. Wu Wei, not laziness, not apathy, but the art of moving with the current rather than against it. And when you discover that rhythm, the one where you are no longer doing life, but being it, then the dance begins. Now here's a peculiar little paradox. Most of us spend our lives trying to be ourselves. But the moment you try, the moment you reach for authenticity, like a product on a shelf you've already lost it. Because the self is not something you can grasp, it's something you relax into. Trying to be spontaneous is like trying to fall asleep on purpose. The very effort prevents the happening. We're so busy asking, am I doing it right? Am I healed yet? Am I authentic now? That we miss the very thing we're looking for. It's like chasing your own shadow around the room. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with the chase. It's adorable, in a way. The ego, trying to polish itself like a stone, endlessly sanding, refining, spiritualizing. But eventually, you begin to laugh, because you realize the one doing all the fixing is the very thing that doesn't need to exist. It's all a bit of cosmic theater. You don't need to become yourself. You already are, right here, in your quirks, your flaws, your silence, your breath. Authenticity isn't something you try to achieve, it's what's left when you stop pretending. And that is freedom. Now, if we really want to go a little deeper, we have to look at something very peculiar. You didn't invent the image you have of yourself. It was handed to you, constructed, layer by layer, built out of glances, comments, expectations, like a mirror made of other people's thoughts. From the moment you were old enough to speak, you were told who you are. What's acceptable, what's not, what earns love, and what doesn't. And so, without even realizing it, you began to shape yourself according to the reflections around you. You became a collection of borrowed ideas, a patchwork personality stitched together from parents, teachers, religions, and then one day, maybe in your 20s, maybe much later, you start to feel tired, not physically, but existentially. As though you've been wearing someone else's clothes for so long, you forgot how your own skin feels. That's the moment, that little flicker of rebellion, that sense that the person you've been performing as isn't the one who's actually alive in there. The most dangerous thing you can do is believe your own role. Because the role is fine, it's useful, even. But it's not you. You are what's playing the role. You are the actor, not the mask. But society teaches you to mistake the costume for the being. You become the good girl, the strong man, the productive adult, and forget that you're also a storm, a poem, a mystery. And so, when people say, be yourself, what they often mean is, be the version of yourself we like the most. But that's not freedom, that's still a performance. The real task is to see through the performance. Not to destroy it, you don't need to rebel with clenched fists, but to recognize that it's just a costume. And when you see it as such, you can finally take it off, or wear it playfully, like a child in a mask. Because the one underneath, that's the real you. The one who doesn't need to be impressive, who isn't worried about being liked, who doesn't have to be good, or enlightened, or enough. That one, the silent, observing, breathing aliveness behind all the stories, was never broken, and never needed fixing. It only needed remembering. So then, what's left? If you are not the voice in your head, not the roles you've been assigned, not the identity you've spent years defending, what remains? Silence. The space in which all thoughts arise and fade. The stillness behind the movement. You see, awakening is not a matter of adding anything. It's not about gathering spiritual merit badges or perfecting your personality. It's a matter of subtraction, of unlearning. Like a muddy pond clearing when the stirring stops. You don't need to do anything for clarity. You simply allow the mud to settle. But most people are afraid of that silence. Because in silence, the ego cannot speak. And without noise, it begins to disappear. Yet that's where your real nature is hiding. Not in the struggle, but in the surrender. The self, the true self, isn't discovered by thinking more, but by thinking less, by looking inward, not with judgment. but with wonder. And in that gentle noticing, you begin to feel it, a quiet hum behind your chest, a spaciousness where the need to become finally dissolves. And what's left is being pure, present, unconditional, just like that. So then, how does one live like this, without all the grasping, the fixing, the polishing? Well, like the sky. The sky doesn't hold on to the clouds, doesn't chase the sun or argue with the storm, it just lets things pass through. And you, if you stop clinging so tightly to your story, can live like that too. No need to constantly edit yourself, no need to be better all the time. Because once you realize you are the sky and not the passing weather, everything becomes a little... You begin to trust life more. Not because you figured it all out, but because you no longer believe you need to. There's a rhythm to things, a timing that doesn't belong to the clock, but to the heart. And when you stop pushing so hard, you can actually hear it. And that's the irony, isn't it? When you stop trying so hard to live the right way, you begin living the real way. More wonder, less control, more play, less proving. Because trees don't strive to be trees, and waves don't try to crash correctly. They just are. And so are you. So let yourself be lived. Let life happen through you without interference. Because you are just like that, and that is more than enough. And so we return to the beginning, to that strange and wonderful statement, there is nothing wrong with you at all. Not as a comforting sentiment, but as a radical, liberating truth. You are not something broken that needs to be repaired. You are not some spiritual project waiting to be completed. You are in this very moment an unfolding mystery, a ripple in eternity, a brief song in the great silence. And if you can see yourself in the right way, not through the eyes of judgment or self-doubt, but as a phenomenon of nature like fire, or clouds, or galaxies, then you will see you were never separate. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were just like that. Not perfect, but whole. Not flawless, but complete. And all that's left is to remember, to drop the pretense, to breathe in and simply be. Because once you stop chasing after some future version of yourself, you'll realize you've been home all along. Not in the world's idea of success, not in someone else's approval, but in your own quiet presence, in the simple sacred fact that you exist, and that is quite enough.
What if we would try not to think of a pink elephant? This probably won't work, because as soon as the pink elephant appears in our minds, it's impossible to get rid of it by consciously not thinking about it. And the more we try to get rid of it, the more it persists. The elephant simile is commonly used to show how difficult it is to get rid of intrusive thoughts by force. But we could also use this simile as a metaphor for how we approach dissatisfaction with life. The pink elephant in this case represents our general dissatisfaction, which may manifest as negative emotions like sadness, stress, anger, or boredom. Ironically, the more we try to be less dissatisfied, the more dissatisfied we become. So could it be that this inclination to be so invested in becoming free from dissatisfaction, trying to be happy, trying to be content, is exactly the reason we aren't? Here we see the paradox of willpower, which is the basis of the law of reversed effort, also referred to as the backwards law by philosopher Allan Watts. The backwards law proposes that the more we pursue something, the more we achieve the opposite of what we truly want, and the more disappointed we feel. Or simply put, the harder we try, the less likely we'll succeed. On the flip side, when we stop trying, we'll have what we want. So, if we want to stop thinking about the pink elephant, in this case, giving up our struggle and letting our desire to get rid of it dry out is the paradoxical solution. Instead of trying to remove the elephant from our thoughts forcefully, we let it dissipate by itself by leaving it alone. Now, how exactly does this backwards law work in practice? Or more specifically, how exactly do we get what we want by not trying to get what we want? This video explores the backwards law and its paradoxical nature, as well as the cause of our ongoing dissatisfaction in life and how we can liberate ourselves from it. How can we get what we want without trying to get it? This seems like an impossible and absurd way to operate, especially in a world where we're used to striving and putting effort into getting what we wish. Willpower is a viable solution to obtain things in the external world. For example, if we want to get rich in a monetary sense, it most likely takes effort to obtain a certain amount of money that will classify us as rich. And if we wish to run a marathon, we'll need to put in the necessary effort to build our stamina up to the point that we can run such a long distance. But the backwards law isn't so much about worldly achievements. If anything, it transcends them. It's about getting what we really, truly want. It's the shortcut to the Holy Grail, the thing we're all after, the goodie. But what is it? Is it wealth? Is it love? Is it friendship? Is it a long and healthy life? Even though such things are pleasurable, they're just cheap imitations of the real thing. They are the things that we believe will lead us to what we seek. But, as the backwards law makes clear, the more we seek, the less we find. The more we chase these outside circumstances, the further we'll be removed from what we truly desire. So, what do we desire? Do we desire happiness? And if so, what is happiness? Is it something that we acquire through things like love and material possessions? According to Allan Watts, we don't know what we truly want because we cannot define it. I quote, "Why don't you really know what you want? 2 reasons that you don't really know what you want. Number 1, you have it. Number 2, you don't know yourself because you never can. The Godhead is never an object of its own knowledge. Just as a knife doesn't cut itself, fire doesn't burn itself, light doesn't illuminate itself." End quote. So could it be that what we seek is obscured by our search for it, and that we're searching for something that we cannot define? But if that's the case, why do we keep searching? The human predicament is a collective delusion which tells us that obtaining external things or changing external circumstances, from objects to money, to adjustments of the body, to changes of scenery, will fundamentally release us from our sense of lack. The backwards law shows us that the opposite is the case. We feel lacking because of our discontent with current circumstances. The greater our discontent, the more we suffer. The greater change we need to be content, the less content we are. Imagine that you've set yourself a goal, which is that you want to become a millionaire, believing that this will make you happy. Setting such a goal not only means that it takes a lot of effort to reach contentment, it also means that being so far removed from that goal makes you unhappy, because you realize how inadequate you are compared to what you want to be. Or how best-selling author Mark Manson put it, pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you lack it in the first place. The more you desperately want to be rich, the more poor and unworthy you feel, regardless of how much money you actually make. End quote. So, if you would increase the amount of money necessary to be happy, you'll feel even more inadequate and subsequently more miserable. But if you would significantly lower the threshold, your feeling of inadequacy will decrease, as the goalpost is moved much closer to where you are. Nevertheless, we still choose to set the bar high, oftentimes far above our current position. And by doing so, our feeling of inadequacy is deep and persisting. The human tendency to continually pursue more as a cure for the itch while simultaneously maintaining that itch by that very pursuit seems illogical. And that's precisely the case according to German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer concluded that we want what we want because, like anything else in the universe, we are representations of the will to live, or simply the will. Schopenhauer argued that the will is an illogical, directionless, continual striving that causes us to live a life of suffering and cannot be ended by anything that the world has to offer. Because of this, we pathologically want more than we need, driven by an incessant sense of lack. The mind perceives lack because it believes that the present moment is not enough. Something is missing, but it doesn't know what. And thus, we keep escaping what is into situations that we perceive as more pleasurable. But when we get there, we eventually find ourselves in the same dissatisfied state that we tried to escape. Schopenhauer stated, and I quote, "Thus, also every keen pleasure is an error and an illusion, for no attained wish can give lasting satisfaction." End quote. According to Schopenhauer, the will is why we strive, the will is why we seek, but following it never satisfies, because the will itself is the very thing that keeps us from getting what we want. Schopenhauer argued that the only way to be truly content is the negation of the will, which leads to a blissful, empty state, free of striving. In other words, stop trying to get it, and you'll have it. He does not store, and therefore he has superabundance. He looks solitary, but has a multitude around him. In his conducting of himself, he is easy and leisurely, and wastes nothing. He does nothing, and laughs at the clever and ingenious. Men all seek for happiness, but he feels complete in his imperfect condition." End quote. Accept imperfection and you feel perfect. Accept loneliness and you feel content alone. Try to be perfect and you're imperfect. Try not to be lonely and you're miserable by yourself. Accepting a negative experience is a positive experience, but fighting a negative experience means that you suffer twice. When you try to stay on the surface of the water, you sink, but when you try to sink, you float, Allan Watts stated. In the same way, when you try to fall asleep, your effort will keep you awake. Only when you stop trying, you'll doze off. And when you hold your breath, you'll lose it. But when you let it go, it continues on its own. When we stop trying to be happy, we'll be happy, because there's nothing we need beyond what is. When we stop trying to be rich, we'll live in abundance, because we're content with what we have, and anything on top of that is a bonus. Thus, the only way to have what we want is not to want it, and that's what the backwards law teaches us. There's a Zen story that illustrates this paradoxical idea by explaining how we can clear cloudy water. Imagine there's a pond with cloudy water and we want to see its floor. We can stir the water or try to remove the cloudiness with our hands, but this won't work. The only way to see its floor is by doing nothing until the cloudiness subsides and the water is clear. The cloudiness represents our desires, our thoughts, our dissatisfaction. The stirring in the water and attempts to remove the cloudiness represent our grasping for happiness. Seeing the floor represents contentment, which only happens when we leave the water alone and let the cloudiness subside by itself. Hence, stop trying to get it, and you'll have it. Being aware of the workings of the backwards law doesn't mean that we should never set goals, never have ambitions, or never pursue change. There's probably an endless amount of reasons why we should make a change and shouldn't accept the status quo. However, the backwards law does teach us not to be fooled by the idea that the pursuit of happiness leads to happiness. It's quite the opposite. And with that knowledge, we're able to enter that blissful state of not wanting a bit more often. Because, as Allan Watts stated, the mystery of life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced.
So every time I hear somebody say men are afraid of dying, I have to stop and laugh, because that's not the fear. It's not even close. The real fear is waking up every single day to a life that feels like a slow motion prison sentence and knowing that you built the bars yourself. Men aren't scared of the end. We're scared of enduring years, maybe decades, of a miserable existence where every choice is someone else's and our own dignity is traded for scraps of approval. That's the conversation men are having publicly and loudly because we're fed up. We aren't just talking amongst ourselves. We are vocal about just how little incentive there is left to play the roles that society still tells us to play. We are told endlessly that men are afraid of commitment. No, men are afraid of committing to something that stacks against them from day one. Marriage, for example, used to be a role where a man could define himself, right? Husband, father, protector, provider, right? So now that same role is legally fragile, it's socially mocked, and it's treated as if it can be dissolved on a whim. The moment a man isn't fulfilling someone else's definition of good enough, it can all be taken from him. All of it, his kids, his house, his savings, his reputation, his name. And he's still expected to play nice while paying for the privilege. It's not fear of responsibility. Men shoulder responsibility every freaking day. For work, for bills, for family. It's fear of signing onto a contract where you carry 100% of the risk and maybe 20% of the control. When a man is surveying his options today, I mean, here's what he's seeing. By the time that many of them are in their 30s and 40s, the available dating pool isn't just smaller, it's shaped by decades of choices they had no part in. Single moms who expect stepdad levels of commitment with zero authority. Divorcees still in litigation with their ex. Women who openly admit they settled and will treat you accordingly. And even in communities that are supposed to be traditional and antithetical to secular culture, like the Catholic community I was a part of for nearly a decade, the dating pool was disappointing, depressing, abysmal. There were women who presented themselves as, committed to the faith, pious, committed to family, but they were flaky, just like secular women. They flaked. They prioritized education, or prioritized if they were going to college, their education or their career over building a home. And they did adopt feminist ideologies as well. And they would quickly move on if you didn't fit into their personal mold. And many of the men there were more loyal to institutional approval, whether from their spouse, political leaders, or the church, than to their own principles. They weren't receptive to my ideals about individual sovereignty or my unwillingness to align with political or religious power structures. And because of that institutional mindset, many of them just ignore the risks associated with the family court system entirely. They are convinced that their religious vows give them some form of immunity or advantage. Reality proves otherwise. And then you have what's called expectation inflation. We've got data that shows a huge percentage of women who are rating the vast majority of men as below average in attractiveness. It's statistically impossible, but perception is reality, and perception drives behavior. And then you've got your cultural double standard. So a man's past mistakes are often held against him, especially in family court, even if they're wildly irrelevant. I know that firsthand. And then, a woman's past, no matter how reckless, so it is reframed as growth and experience and finding herself, right? Dude, when men say there's nothing out there, they mean it. There's nothing out there. There's no one out there. There's definitely no one out there worth risking your peace for. That's for sure. And men used to define themselves through male-centric environments, because these were places where blunt honesty and competition and hierarchy, they weren't seen as toxic. They were the point. Now most of those spaces have been re-engineered completely to prioritize comfort over results. And sure, in theory, inclusion sounds good, but in practice, the constant policing of tone, ambition, and even humor, it strips out the very things that made those spaces motivating to men in the first place. Just look at gyms. Used to be a reliable male-centered space. Now it's an environment where men are expected to suppress natural instincts while navigating unwritten social rules. You can be focused on your workout and still be accused of inappropriate behavior simply for existing in the same space as someone who decided to take offense to you for some reason, whether real or imaginary. I mean, and because so much of gym culture is now, it now revolves around social media and performative displays, there's a constant tension between what's allowed and what's simply human. What used to be a space for testosterone and training and discipline and camaraderie has turned into yet another environment where men feel like they have to self-censor, have to shrink. If we want male spaces to survive, men will have to start protecting them instead of passively giving ground. I mean, you can still find male camaraderie. It's far and few between, I guess. I mean, it's more underground now, I guess you could say, with, you know, maybe some niche hobbies and private online communities, this YouTube channel, gaming squads, whatever, man. I mean, men haven't ever stopped wanting to belong. They've just stopped wanting to belong to systems that demand that they dilute themselves to fit in. In the past, I mean, you could shame men into service, whether it was fighting wars or taking dangerous jobs or marrying quickly to settle down. But there was always at least the promise of respect in return. But today, that respect has been replaced with open mockery. Just look at husbands and fathers and how they're portrayed in commercials and sitcoms. I mean, come on. As bumbling incompetents who need their wife or kids to correct them. I mean, you can't shame a man into signing up for a role where the reward is being treated like a punchline. And yet there has been a shift. Men are opting out of the old scripts. There is a recalibration that's been happening. Some men are formally rejecting marriage and long-term relationships, and others are quietly living that way without labeling it. But I mean, my personal view, while I understand why men go this route, I see how movements on both extremes, whether, you know, it's certain strands of MGTOW or, you know, feminism, it ends up serving the same larger agenda, which is fewer families, fewer births, and a more fragmented society. And that outcome benefits those who want more control over people's lives. I'm not aligned with that end goal, not at all. I believe that men can reject broken systems without rejecting the idea of building a strong, lasting legacy. I mean, we are seeing men, you know, having more selective investments. So men are pouring effort into, you know, projects, hobbies, businesses, and, you know, friendships with an ROI that's tangible if they can find them. And autonomy as status. I mean, status isn't just about money anymore. It's about freedom. It's about not having a boss that owns your time. It's about not having those golden handcuffs. It's about not having a partner who weaponizes your commitments. No system that can pull the rug out from under you overnight. Men aren't failing to man up. They're refusing to play a rigged game. Men still want connection and intimacy and purpose, but they want it on terms that don't destroy them in the process. They want partnerships where respect goes both ways and disagreements don't trigger threats to their relationship with their kids, and where their contributions are recognized, not minimized. They want spaces where they can be direct without walking on eggshells, where their ambition isn't framed as aggression, and where competence is valued more than compliance. And most of all, they want to live without the constant background anxiety that everything they've built could vanish because someone else simply changed their mind one day. So dying alone, dude, it's not even top 5. Living a life of quiet suffocation and desperation, that's the nightmare. Waking up next to someone who doesn't respect you and working a job that you hate because you have to keep the alimony and child support payments flowing. Swallowing your opinions to keep the peace. Spending years in a home where you're a visitor in your own life. But I want to share something a man commented on one of my videos. He had sent it a few days ago. Now, I won't name him, but it hit me hard because it's the reality for so many men. I get a lot of these comments like this and emails. Yeah, this guy left a comment and he said, "Hey man, first of all, thank you for your honesty and for your content. I am 47, realizing that my marriage of 18 years is a ship that's about to sink for many of the reasons that you've gone into in your other videos. At work, I am highly respected by my peers. I am a supervisor and have been told by my crew that I am the best supervisor they have ever had. I have had guys move on to other jobs and tell me that later also. I get so much respect at work, it's ridiculous. But then at home, I am an incompetent fool who can't do anything right. I have never been respected by my wife and am realizing that I never will be. So I'm literally just done trying. My kids do respect me. I have 3, ages 12 through 16, and I will continue trying to be the best dad I can to them for the rest of my life. But I'm ready to admit this marriage isn't going to get better because I'm the only one trying to make it better. I am the only one going to counseling. I'm the only one who can and do admit there are some areas I need to improve on and am actively working to improve on, but there is no accountability from my wife. So all that to say, thank you for your content. It has shed some light on why I am not respected by my wife." And he also shared his view on Christianity and, loyal to God, but deeply disillusioned with the modern church, whether Catholic or Protestant. I mean, that's where many men are, not walking away from faith itself, but walking away from institutions that demand loyalty without delivering what they claim to stand for. So, I mean, where does that leave us? I mean, it leaves us with a choice. It leaves us with a choice. You can keep chasing the validation of systems that don't respect you, or you can build a life where your respect for yourself isn't up for negotiation. And that might mean redefining success. It might mean disappointing people who expected you to follow the script. But the alternative is a slow erosion of who you are until you don't recognize yourself anymore. So no, men don't worry about dying alone. They worry about living miserably. And they're finally realizing that they don't have to. If your life feels like a prison sentence, stop playing the role of the prisoner. Be the guy who builds the escape tunnel. And when you break through to the other side, you'll find out that there's less loneliness out here than you've been led to believe.
You ever notice how they keep telling you you've got choices? Yeah, every election year, every ad, every politician, they're always saying it. The people have a choice. Oh, really? Where the hell is it? Because I've been looking for it, and all I keep seeing is the same crap in a different wrapper. That's not a choice. That's a con job. That's like walking into a restaurant, opening the menu, and they've got exactly 2 items, a hamburger or a cheeseburger. And then they tell you it's the greatest selection in the world. Look, you're free to choose. Oh, gee, thanks. Do I want the meat with the cheese or the meat without the cheese? Tough decision. Life-changing, and people eat it up. They act like this is freedom. We're free because we get to pick. No, you're not free. You're trapped in the kiddie section of reality where they only let you pick between door number 1 and door number 2. And here's the best part behind both doors. It's the same pile of garbage, just sprayed with a different air freshener. That's the whole game. It's Coke or Pepsi, red team or blue team, Burger King or McDonald's. And guess what? No matter what you pick, you're getting fat broke and lied to. But hey, congratulations. You exercised your freedom of choice. See, they know people love the feeling of choice. It's like when a kid cries and you don't want to give them too much power. So you say, do you want the blue cup or the red cup? The kid's happy because he feels like he's in charge. That's what politics is. That's what the system is. They're treating you like you're 5 years old. Do you want the liar in the blue tie or the liar in the red tie? Do you want the crook who steals from the left pocket or the crook who steals from the right? And people clap for this. They line up outside polling station, patting themselves on the back, saying, I voted, I made a difference. Yeah, you made about as much difference as choosing which end of the turd to start eating from. And the news helps sell it. Oh, they love it. They make it sound like the fate of civilization is on the line. The choice is clear. Everything depends on this election. Really? Everything? You mean to tell me that after 200 years of picking from the same 2 piles of crap, suddenly this one's going to fix it all? Give me a break. Every 4 years, it's the same recycled slogans, the same promises, the same horse and pony show. They're not giving you choices. They're keeping you busy. They're keeping you distracted. You don't notice you're on a treadmill because they're too busy making you argue over which color treadmill looks better. You know what's funny? If the choices were real, you wouldn't need ads. Think about it. You don't see ads for air. Nobody runs commercials saying, hey folks, try breathing. It's good for you. You don't need to convince people to buy something that's real and necessary. But elections? Oh, they spend billions to shove it down your throat because they know if you actually looked at it clearly, you'd realize the emperor's got no clothes, and the emperor's also mooning you while stealing your wallet. And let's not forget the corporate side of this. Every choice you get is already bought and paid for. Doesn't matter who you pick, they both belong to the same owners. Big money, big business, big donors. They're the ones calling the shots. You think you're choosing between 2 different things, but really you're choosing between 2 different puppets, and the same guy's got his hand up both their asses. That's not choice. That's ventriloquism. But people love to believe. They cling to the fantasy. Because if they didn't, they'd have to admit they don't actually control anything. And that's scary. Nobody likes to feel powerless. So instead they pretend. They pretend they go into a booth every 4 years and picking one of the 2 pre-approved flavors of bullshit is the same thing as freedom. They'll even yell at you if you don't play along. If you don't vote, you don't have the right to complain. Oh, really? If I don't vote, I don't get to complain. That's like saying, if I don't pick which mugger robs me, I don't get to complain about being robbed. Screw that. I get to complain whenever I want, and if you don't like it, go file a complaint with the complaint department. It's located right next to the Department of Things that don't exist. And let's be real here. Even when people think they're making a choice, it's usually just picking the lesser of 2 evils. That's the standard line. Vote for the lesser of 2 evils. That's your freedom, evil A or evil B. That's not a democracy. That's a hostage situation. And guess what? Evil is still evil. Picking the lesser one doesn't make you virtuous. It just makes you an accessory. You're still helping evil win. You just get to feel a little better about yourself while the same crap keeps happening. Look around you. Has anything really changed? The same wars, the same debts, the same lies, the same broken promises. The only thing that changes is the mascot. The whole country is like a sports league. People pick their team, they buy the merch, they chant the slogans, and they scream at the other side like it's life or death. And at the end of the season, no matter who wins, the stadium owner's the one who takes home the money. That's the way it works. The people in charge don't care who you root for as long as you keep buying the tickets and eating the hot dogs. And the illusion doesn't stop with politics. It's everywhere. Look at products. 20 different brands of toothpaste, all owned by the same 3 companies. That's not choice, that's marketing. Do you want Ultra White Sparkle Fresh or Fresh Sparkle Ultra White? Who cares? It's the same damn paste in a different tube. They just want you to feel like you're exercising control while they're laughing all the way to the bank. It's the same thing with your phone, your clothes, your news, even your food. They give you 100 labels, but all the roads lead back to the same factory, the same boardroom, the same handful of billionaires who already own your ass 6 ways to Sunday. But here's the kicker: people defend it. They'll fight you to protect the illusion. If you tell them it's all a scam, they get mad, they get defensive. Because nobody wants to admit they've been duped their whole life. Nobody wants to admit they've been voting for the same crap in different colors. It's easier to scream at the other team than to admit the whole game is fixed. People don't want truth, they want comfort. And comfort is pretending that picking between chocolate and vanilla means you're free. You know what real choice would look like? Real choice would be the option to say no to the whole damn menu. Real choice would be being able to say, hey, I don't want your hamburger or your cheeseburger. I want to open my own restaurant. But that's not allowed. The system doesn't give you the tools to actually change the menu. They just let you pick between the 2 stale sandwiches they're serving. That's why they call it the system, because you're stuck inside it. So the next time somebody tells you about the importance of your choice, ask yourself, is it really a choice or just the illusion of one? Because if you're standing in a prison yard and they ask, do you want to walk in circles clockwise or counterclockwise today? That's not freedom. That's just window dressing on your chains. And you'd better believe they're counting on you never noticing. You ever wonder why schools are the way they are? You ever sit back and think, wow, what a coincidence, 12 years of my life spent sitting in a little box, staring at the front, memorizing useless crap I forgot 10 minutes later, while somebody rang a bell to tell me when I could eat, when I could piss, and when I could leave. Doesn't sound less like education and more like training a factory worker, because that's exactly what it is. School isn't about learning, it's about obedience. It's not about filling your head with knowledge, it's about programming you to follow instructions without asking too many annoying questions. And the whole thing is designed that way. From the very beginning, what do they tell you? Sit down, be quiet, raise your hand, don't talk unless you're called on, don't question the authority at the front of the room. You don't get points for being curious, you don't get points for thinking outside the box. You get points for coloring inside the lines and regurgitating the answers exactly the way they were fed to you. It's like a rehearsal for adult life. Shut up, show up on time, punch the clock, and don't make waves. They don't teach you how to think, they teach you what to think. And even that's generous, because half the crap they shove in your head is useless. You ever need to know the capital of Delaware in real life? No, you ever had to recite the periodic table to get a job. But you sure as hell better know how to show up on time, follow the rules, and do exactly what you're told, because that's what really counts. That's the real lesson. Don't question the system. Don't step out of line. Don't think for yourself. Just memorize, obey, and repeat. Congratulations, you're educated. And then they act surprised when people grow up into mindless consumers who can't think their way out of a wet paper bag. Of course they can't. You didn't teach them to think. You train them like dogs. That's what school is, obedience school for humans. Sit, stay, speak when spoken to, do the trick, get the grade. Don't do the trick, you get punished. It's all rewards and punishments. Carrots and sticks. They could replace half the teachers with dog trainers and nobody would notice. At least then you'd get a treat when you did your homework. And the homework. Don't even get me started. You spend 7 hours a day in a classroom and then they send you home with more of the same crap. Why? Because they don't want you having time to actually live. They don't want you learning something useful on your own, developing an actual skill, or God forbid, questioning why the hell you're wasting your life on this nonsense. No. Keep the kid busy. Keep the mind occupied with worksheets and essays nobody's ever going to read again, because idle hands might actually figure something out, and the system doesn't like that. And the grading, pure manipulation. They don't grade you on intelligence, they grade you on compliance. You follow instructions, you get an A, you get an F, that's it. It's not about creativity, not about insight, not about original thought. It's about whether or not you played the game the way they told you to play it. That's why some of the dumbest people you'll ever meet are straight A students. They're not smart, they're obedient. They're the ones who learned the trick, figure out what the teacher wants and feed it back to them like a parrot. That's it. Education is just one long parrot audition. And what about the so-called critical thinking they pretend to teach? You know how they do it. They give you a question with 4 answers. You pick the right one, multiple choice. That's not critical thinking. That's process of elimination. You're not thinking, you're just gambling. And you only get credit if you pick the answer they already decided is correct. That's not critical thinking, that's a rigged quiz show. Real critical thinking would mean questioning the whole damn premise of the question. But try that on a test and see what happens. They'll fail your ass and tell you to stop being a smart aleck. The whole thing is set up to break you in. They want you used to the bells, the lines, the authority figures, the punishments, the rankings. It's a dress rehearsal for life in the machine. When you're a kid, the bell tells you when to go to class. When you're an adult, the whistle tells you when to start work. When you're a kid, you raise your hand to ask permission to piss. When you're an adult, you ask your boss. When you're a kid, you get graded on your performance. When you're an adult, you get performance reviews. It's the same damn system, just with a paycheck. And they sell it to you like it's the greatest thing in the world. Education is the key to success. Oh, really? Then why are so many educated people broke, miserable, and drowning in debt? Why are the people who followed the rules, got the grades, went to college, did everything they were told, now stuck working 3 jobs they hate just to pay off the loans for the education that was supposed to save them? Because it was never about success. It was about obedience. The system doesn't care if you succeed. The system just wants you trained well enough to keep it running. That's all. And the irony is the people who actually succeed, the ones who break out and do something different, are usually the ones who didn't buy into it. The dropouts, the misfits, the ones who said, screw your rules, screw your grades. I want to figure out my own way. Those are the people who end up making a difference. But the system doesn't celebrate them. The system calls them failures. And then years later, when they're billionaires, they pretend they were geniuses all along. No, they weren't geniuses. They just didn't let the obedience machine crush them. And it's not like this is an accident. This is by design. The system doesn't want smart people. Smart people are dangerous. Smart people ask questions. Smart people figure out when they're being screwed. The last thing the system wants is a population full of independent thinkers who can see through the con. They don't want that. They want people just smart enough to run the machines, fill out the forms, and push the buttons, but dumb enough to believe the whole charade. That's what school is for, to make sure you don't get too smart. And just to make sure you buy into it, they wrap it all up in patriotism and morality. Stay in school! Respect your teachers! Get an education! It's for your future. They guilt you into it, they shame you into it, and if that doesn't work, they legislate it, they make it the law. You have to go, you don't get a choice. And while you're sitting there being indoctrinated, they're drilling it into your head that this is freedom. Freedom! You're free to sit in this room, memorize this crap, and follow these rules, or we'll punish you. Freedom, my ass. And the parents play along too. Did you do your homework? Did you get good grades? Did you listen to your teacher? They don't ask you if you learned something useful, if you grew as a person, if you figured out how to think for yourself. No, they just want to know if you obeyed, because that's how they were trained too. They went through the same machine, and now they're passing it down like a family heirloom. The cycle just keeps going. Obedience generation after generation. And when you finally graduate, they hand you a piece of paper and tell you you're educated. You're not educated, you're certified. Certified in following orders, certified in memorization, certified in obedience. That diploma is just a receipt that says, congratulations, you survived 12 years of conditioning. Now go out there and be a good little worker. But here's the sickest part, most people never realize it. They go their whole lives thinking they're educated, thinking they're free thinkers, thinking they're making choices, when in reality they've been programmed from the start to fit into the machine and never question it. And they call that civilization. They call that progress. But if you step back and look at it clearly, it looks a lot more like mass training, a population trained to obey, consume, and repeat, and the system wouldn't have it any other way. You ever notice how they always keep you busy with nonsense? Always. Doesn't matter where you turn, there's some new circus act designed to grab your attention and shake it around like a cat toy. Sports, celebrities, reality shows, gossip, outrage, anything to keep you looking anywhere except where the real screw job is happening. Because while you're screaming at your TV about some quarterback's contract, guess what? They're picking your pocket, stealing your rights, and selling your future to the highest bidder. But hey, don't worry about that. Did you hear what Taylor Swift posted on Instagram? And people fall for it every damn time. They can't help it. Bread and circuses, that's the trick. Feed them junk food, give them a show, and they'll sit quietly while you burn the house down around them. It's the oldest con in the book. The Romans knew it. They built colosseums. They threw people to the lions while the empire was crumbling. Same playbook today, just with bigger screens and better lighting. They don't even have to build a colosseum anymore. You've got one in your living room. It's called a television. And now it's in your pocket too. You carry your own personal distraction device around like it's oxygen. And it works too. People get more fired up about who's on Dancing with the Stars than they do about who's writing the laws that decide whether they can afford to eat next month. They know every stat about their favorite football team, but they don't know jack about the politicians who are screwing them blind. Ask a guy about his team. He can tell you who threw the most touchdowns in 1987. Ask him who his congressman is, and he looks at you like you just asked him to solve quantum physics. Priorities, folks. Bread and circuses and the media. Oh, they're in on it. They don't want you thinking about anything that matters. That's dangerous. They want you glued to the spectacle. So they feed you gossip, they feed you scandals, they feed you distractions. Look over here. Don't worry about the war, the debt, the corruption. Look, some actress wore the wrong dress on the red carpet. People eat it up like candy. They can't get enough. And then you've got the outrage machine. That's the modern upgrade. It's not enough to distract you. They've got to keep you pissed off too. Angry. Because when you're angry, you don't think straight. They get you fighting each other over every little thing. Red team versus blue team. Mask versus no mask. This celebrity versus that one. They'll manufacture a controversy out of thin air just to keep you busy. Meanwhile, the people actually screwing you, they're sitting back laughing because you're too busy yelling at your neighbor about pronouns to notice the bank just took your house. It's like professional wrestling. The whole thing is staged. They create villains, they create heroes, they make you pick a side and you get emotionally invested. You scream, you shout, you wave your little foam finger, and at the end of the night, all the wrestlers go backstage, count their money, and drink together. That's politics, that's media, that's the whole damn circus. And you're paying for the ticket whether you like it or not. And let's not forget sports. Oh, sports are the best distraction of all. Nothing against the games themselves, they're fun, but look at how they're used. Endless coverage, endless debates, endless statistics. Sports radio, sports TV, sports podcasts, fantasy leagues. People pour hours into this stuff. They'll argue for days about who's the greatest of all time, but ask them to explain how the healthcare system works, and they look like you just asked them to recite the Iliad in Latin. It's easier to memorize batting averages than to figure out how you're being robbed, and that's the point. And when the sports aren't enough, they give you the celebrity freak show, who's dating who cheated on who got plastic surgery, who had a breakdown. You know more about some singer's relationship drama than you do about what's in your food, and that's not an accident. That's the circus. That's how they keep you numb, keep you busy, keep you stupid. You ever notice how every big scandal in politics just happens to drop right when there's some celebrity story blowing up, or vice versa? It's like magic. Sleight of hand. Look over here. Don't notice the law we just passed that lets us spy on you 24/7. Look over here instead. Kim Kardashian got divorced again. Oh wow, stop the presses. Who cares if your freedoms are gone? At least you know what outfit some influencer wore at Coachella. And the thing is, people don't just watch the circus, they defend it. They'll fight you if you suggest turning it off. You tell somebody maybe it's not healthy to spend 4 hours a day watching mindless garbage, and they act like you just insulted their mother. People get attached to their distractions. They love them. They need them. Because if they didn't have them, they'd have to face reality. And reality's ugly, reality's depressing. Reality's realizing you've been conned your whole life. Easier to just watch the game and order another pizza. And now with the internet, the circus never stops. You used to be able to turn off the TV. Now it follows you everywhere. Notifications, updates, breaking news, viral videos. It's a 24/7 carnival. You can't escape. And the more they feed you, the more addicted you get. You can't even sit in traffic without pulling out your phone to see what stupid thing went viral today. People can't stand silence anymore. They can't stand stillness. They need the circus at all times because silence means thinking, and thinking is dangerous. And the system knows this. They count on it. They don't want you thinking. They don't want you asking questions. They want you entertained, distracted, outraged, and confused. Keep you busy with the circus while they run the empire into the ground. That's the formula. It worked for Rome. It works now. The only difference is the costumes. And the saddest part, it works. It works so well that people don't even want to break free. They like it. They prefer it. They'd rather argue about who got robbed at the Oscars than talk about the fact their kids are inheriting a planet on fire. They'd rather scream about a referee's bad call than notice their government just handed trillions to banks while they can't afford rent. They'd rather memorize song lyrics than realize they've been singing the same tired tune of exploitation their whole damn lives. That's the circus, that's the distraction. And the ringmasters are laughing all the way to the bank. You ever notice how they never take your freedom all at once? No, that would be too obvious. People might actually wake up if they tried to grab it in one shot. No, the trick is to take it slowly, little by little, a law here, a tax there, a regulation over there, tiny little slices until one day you wake up and realize you're living in a cage with wee feet.
That's how they do it.
Quietly, silently, while you're too busy watching reality shows and eating cheese, flavored foam to notice. And the beauty of it from their perspective is that they make you ask for it. That's the genius part. They don't just steal your freedoms, they convince you it's for your own good. They scare the crap out of you, and then they sell you the cure. We need to monitor your phone calls. Terrorists, we need to search your bags. Safety, we need to raise your taxes, roads. And people nod along like obedient little pets. Yes, please, take more. Protect me. Protect you from what? Freedom. Because that's the only thing you're losing. And they always package it nice, don't they? Wrap it in flags, slap a slogan on it, make it sound noble. The Patriot Act, doesn't that sound nice? Sounds like a law about apple pie and baseball. In reality, it's about spying on every damn thing you do. But hey, they called it Patriot, so you feel good about losing your privacy, and you'll thank them for it. That's the trick. They could call a bill the Happy Bunny Sunshine Act, and people would cheer while it stripped them naked and stole their wallets. It's not even subtle anymore. Cameras on every corner, microphones in every device, GPS tracking in your pocket. You bought it yourself! That's the best scam ever. They used to need a warrant to tap your phone. Now you pay $1,000 for the privilege of being tracked 20/47. You line up outside the store to buy the newest gadget that spies on you better than the last one. You can't make this stuff up. It's like the sheep buying the knife and handing it to the butcher. And don't get me started on money. That's the biggest theft of all. They take it slowly too. Inflation, taxes, fees, your paycheck gets smaller while the bills get bigger. And they tell you it's just the economy, just the market. No, it's robbery. Silent robbery. You work 40 hours a week, and by the time you're done paying taxes, paying bills, paying fees, you've got enough left over for a pizza and a six-pack, maybe. And if you're lucky, they'll let you finance the pizza. And while they're draining your bank account, they've got you distracted. Sports, celebrities, the latest viral dance challenge. They're cutting your legs out from under you while you're too busy arguing online about whether Batman could beat Iron Man in a fight. By the way, he couldn't, because neither of them exists, just like your freedom. And here's the kicker, every time they take something away, they never give it back. Never. Once it's gone, it's gone. They introduce some temporary measure during a crisis, and 40 years later, it's still there. Temporary, my ass. Nothing's more permanent than a temporary government program. They hold on to that stuff like a dog with a bone. Try getting it back. You've got a better chance of finding Bigfoot riding the Loch Ness Monster in Area 51. And don't think voting's gonna fix it. No, that's part of the illusion too. Vote for me. I'll restore your freedoms. Yeah, sure you will. You'll restore them the same way the guy at the pawn shop promises to get your TV back. Once it's gone, it's gone. You're not getting it back. At best, it'll take a little less next time, and you're supposed to be grateful. Look, we only spied on half your emails this year. Oh, thank you so much. I feel so free now. And it's not just the government. Oh no, the corporations are in on it too. They're taking your freedom and selling it back to you as a subscription service. Used to be you bought something once, it was yours. Now you rent it. Music, movies, software, even your car. It's all subscriptions. They own it. You just lease the privilege of using it until they decide otherwise. You don't own anything anymore. And that's not an accident. It's the plan. Keep you hooked, keep you paying, keep you dependent. And while all this is going on, they've convinced you that you're free. That's the sickest part. They tell you you're free because you can pick between 50 flavors of potato chips. That's the trade-off. You can't own your house, but hey, you can get jalapeno cheddar ruffled chips. Freedom! You can't afford healthcare, but hey, Netflix just added 5 new superhero shows. Freedom! You're being watched, tracked, milked, and controlled, but you can buy 3 different brands of deodorant, so you must be free. And they always do it quietly. No big announcements, no parades, just little steps. They sneak it in at night while you're asleep, while you're distracted, while you're entertained, and by the time you notice, it's too late. They've been at it for decades, slowly chipping away at everything you thought you had. Like termites eating your house from the inside. One day you lean on the wall and the whole damn thing collapses, and you stand there wondering what happened. I'll tell you what happened. You let them nibble at your freedom until there was nothing left but crumbs. And don't expect a warning either. They'll never tell you straight. They'll never say, hey folks, we're taking away your privacy now. No, they'll say, we're improving your security. They'll never say, we're draining your bank account. They'll say, we're stabilizing the economy. They'll never say, we're censoring your speech. They'll say, we're fighting misinformation. Always dressed up, always disguised, like a thief in a tuxedo. And the sad part is people fall for it. Over and over. They don't just allow it, they cheer for it. They beg for it. Yes, please, take away more freedom. Keep me safe, keep me comfortable, keep me distracted. It's pathetic. The only thing people fight for anymore is the right to be entertained. Try taking away someone's phone and watch them lose their mind. But take away their rights, their privacy, their future. They don't even blink. As long as they've got Wi-Fi and delivery apps, they're fine. And you know what's coming next? It doesn't stop. It never stops. They're going to keep pushing, keep taking, keep tightening the screws. One law, one rule, one little slice at a time until you're not even free enough to notice you're not free. And then it'll be done. Game over. You'll be sitting in your little pod, eating your government Approve bug nuggets streaming your government approved shows and thinking you're free because you can still pick your favorite flavor of soda. That's the silent theft. That's the long con. They don't need to break down your door to take your freedom. They just wait for you to hand it over. And so far, you've been doing a damn good job of it. And the worst part is, you didn't even hear the lock click.
Men don't lose their lives in one moment. They lose them in pieces. A year here, a compromise there, and before you know it, they bled out 2 decades without even realizing it. And when they finally wake up, it's not to a triumphant sunrise, but to the horror that their best years were given away for nothing. That is what I want to talk about today. The truth most men already feel in their bones, but rarely speak out loud. And you don't have to wake up at 40 or 50 and suddenly become disillusioned. It happens in silence. Every agreement you didn't challenge. Every woman you stayed with just to avoid the argument. Every job you swallowed because you were told to be responsible. That's the slow bleed. The hemorrhage. It's the theft of time disguised as duty. And the tragedy is, most men don't realize they're dying while they're still alive. And let's be honest, most men would rather be alone than controlled. That is why you see so many of us checking out. And it's not weakness, it's resistance. It's choosing solitude over suffocation. The modern world doesn't offer men brotherhood. It offers surveillance and micromanagement and conditional love. So what do men do? They retreat. Not necessarily because they hate people, but because they can't stomach one more leash around their neck. Women don't understand men's loneliness. Not really. A man's loneliness isn't about having people around him. It's about not being understood in his silence. He can be in a room full of people, full of his family, his friends, his coworkers, whatever, and still feel completely invisible. That's the kind of loneliness that eats men alive. It isn't solved by hugs or being told you're enough. It's solved by someone actually seeing the weight he carries without asking him to apologize for it. Carl Jung said that every man carries a shadow. But in our culture, men are not allowed to integrate it. Instead, we're told to suppress it and pretend it doesn't exist. And what happens? The mask grows thicker. Men put on the face of compliance, the face of the good worker, the face of the agreeable husband. Meanwhile, their soul decays in the dark. Dostoevsky understood this. He wrote men not as heroes but as broken mirrors, reflecting both guilt and longing. That's closer to the truth of the modern man than anything you'll see on an Instagram reel. In Notes from Underground, Dostoevsky described a man who hated himself for submitting to society, yet also hated society for demanding his submission. That's every man I know. He goes to work, pays his bills, nods along in conversations that bore him to death. But inside he's underground, resentful, suffocating, yet too afraid to explode. Until one day he does. That's why midlife crises happen. They're not about cars or hair dye. They're about the unbearable tension of decades of silence finally ripping apart. Solzhenitsyn described life in the Gulag not just as a physical imprisonment, but as a war against the human soul. Men today live in a different kind of Gulag. Not one of barbed wire, but routine. Debt, bureaucracy, the constant surveillance of peers and family expectations. The Gulag of a man's life is built out of being a good dad, or being a good husband, or being a good employee, while every desire of his own is treated like contraband. And the punishment for breaking the rules? Exile, divorce, alienation, poverty. Every man knows this risk, which is why he stays compliant until he rots. Nietzsche warned us, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." The problem is, men today are given the how, but never the why. You're told how to behave, how to work, how to date, how to parent, but never why. And without that why, life becomes machinery. A man wakes up at 40 and realizes he's been living someone else's life, serving someone else's script. And in that moment, when he finally sees it, he's either destroyed by despair or reborn in defiance. This is the brutal truth. The clock starts ticking at 40. You either awaken or you stay asleep until death. Because at 40, you can't afford illusions anymore. You see through the lies, through the Instagram fantasies, through the Hallmark romance, through the corporate, "we're a family" nonsense. At 40, you know exactly how much time you've lost. And the question becomes, will you keep bleeding? Or will you fight back for what little you have left? So what's the answer? It's not the therapy cliches. It's not self-care. It's reclaiming your time with surgical precision. Cutting out the people who waste it. Walking away from systems that drain it. Finding men who will fight alongside you, not drain you. Living as if every hour matters because it does. The tragedy is not that life ends. The tragedy is that most men never live while they're here. If you're watching this and you feel like I just described your life, you are not broken. You're awake. And if you're awake, you have a choice. Either crawl back into sleep, or you stand up, even if you stand alone. Men who stand alone eventually find each other. That's the brotherhood the world doesn't want us to have. But it's the one that will change everything. Don't waste another 20 years. Start now. Start now, because the only thing worse than waking up at 40 is never waking up at all. Men die for causes, women die for attention. And both think the other doesn't notice. Let that sit for a second. Because that single line, it says more about men and women than 100 self-help books ever will. It's not meant to be nice. It's meant to be true. Men, your great weakness and your great strength is that you will die for something bigger than yourself. History is built on the bones of men who chose a cause over their own survival. Hell, nations exist because of it. Wars are fought because of it. Entire generations of men vanished into trenches, jungles, and deserts because they believed in something enough to risk death. And women? Well, their battlefield is different. Women die for attention. They will wreck their bodies with surgery, they will destroy their dignity with desperate performances, and they will torch their reputations online, all for the illusion of being seen, remembered, and adored. The male drive is sacrifice. The female drive is recognition. Both are forms of immortality. Both are equally dangerous. And both are rarely understood by the opposite sex. If you've ever wondered why men will run into burning buildings and volunteer for wars and work themselves into early graves, it's not just about providing. It's about mattering. A man who has no cause is a man already halfway in the grave. That's why men join armies, gangs, corporations, and religions. They need something to pour themselves into. They need that. They need a hill to die on. Because deep down, men know that their worth isn't measured in comfort. It isn't. It's measured in conquest and contribution. That's what it's measured in. But here's the dark side. Men don't always choose noble causes. A man might die for his country, but he might also die for his gang colors. A man might sacrifice everything for his family, or he might sacrifice everything for a corporation that never even knew his name. The tragedy of man is not that he dies for causes, it's that sometimes he dies for the wrong ones. And women's relationship with attention is just as intense. Where men sacrifice their lives for a mission, women sacrifice their lives for eyes. The eyes of others. The acknowledgement that they exist, that they matter, and that they are wanted. It's why the average woman's self-worth rises and falls with how she looks in a selfie. It's why entire industries from cosmetics to OF exist and thrive. It's not just because women are shallow, it's because recognition is survival for them. In the past, a woman invisible to men meant no protection, no provision, no survival whatsoever. Now today, the stakes have shifted, but the psychology hasn't. Attention is currency, and women will bankrupt themselves chasing it. And just like men, women often die for the wrong attention. They'll chase validation from men who don't love them, from strangers on social media who do not care about them, and from a public that cheers them today and then mocks them tomorrow. Women don't always die for noble recognition. They die for shallow attention. And here's where it gets interesting. Men think women don't notice the sacrifices they make. And women think that men don't notice the attention that they crave. But both are wrong. Men see women's thirst for attention. They just pretend not to because calling it out kills the illusion. And women see men's need for causes. They just pretend not to because acknowledging it would mean admitting how much society depends on male sacrifice. So Men accuse women of vanity, and women accuse men of stupidity. But at the end of the day, both are just pointing out the shadow side of each other's survival strategy. This is why men and women clash so much today. Men are tired of dying for causes that they no longer believe in. They see every day society just mocking them for working and fighting and providing, and so they're opting out. They're deciding to protect their peace and just walk away. And women, on the other hand, are drowning in attention, but starving for meaning. They've got likes, followers, and comments, but none of it fills the void. They're visible to the world, sure, but invisible where it matters. That's why you see so many women miserable, despite being praised, adored, and noticed. Men without causes become empty. Women without meaningful attention become hollow. And together, they form a generation where neither sex is fulfilled, and both blame each other for it. This perspective stings because it strips away the illusions. Men want to believe that they're rational, and women want to believe that they're deep. But the truth is simpler and therefore harsher. Men are willing to die for something. Women are willing to die to be seen. And neither one is inherently better, but both are tragic if they're not channeled well. And if you're a man listening to this, here's the lesson. Choose your cause wisely. Don't die for a company that doesn't know your name. Don't bleed out your years for a woman who doesn't respect you. Don't sacrifice your body for a society that hates you. If you're going to give yourself to a cause, make it something that will matter when you're gone. Your peace, your mission, your legacy, that's worth dying for. And if you're a woman listening, here's your side. Attention is not the same thing as love. Recognition is not the same as respect. Being seen isn't the same as being valued. Do not mistake eyeballs for devotion. Don't bankrupt your dignity for clout. Because the attention you crave is fleeting. And the way that you get it might be the very thing that destroys you. Men and women were never meant to compete with each other. They were meant to complement each other with their different strengths and their different drives, working together to build something bigger than either could alone. Men bring the mission, women bring the support and the recognition. That balance is what makes families, legacies, and civilizations possible. But in today's West, in today's Western society, that balance has been sabotaged. Women aren't trained to complement men anymore. They're trained to compete with them, to treat men like rivals instead of partners and leaders. They're trained to see collaboration as weakness instead of strength. So, what would be redemption has become dysfunction. Men are still dying for causes, and women are still dying for attention. But instead of using those drives to build with each other, they're tearing each other down. And that's why everything feels broken. So yes, men die for causes, women die for attention. Both think the other doesn't notice. And the tragedy isn't that they're wrong, it's that they're right. And until that changes, nothing else will.